The morning sun spread golden light across the vast garden of Alexander Ward's mansion. The billionaire, known for his empire in technology and luxury goods, was a man who rarely noticed the tiny details of life around him. Yet on this day something unusual caught his attention. As he stepped out for his usual stroll, adjusting the cufflinks of his crisp white shirt, his gaze froze on a sight that pierced his heart. On the far side of the garden, near the trimmed hedges, his maid, Grace, was kneeling on the grass. She wasn't weeding, nor was she tending to flowers. She was plucking the soft green blades of grass with trembling fingers, and eating them. Alexander stood still, his breath caught in his throat. For a moment he doubted his own eyes. His maid, his loyal employee, who had worked quietly and tirelessly in his home for months, was eating grass as though it were food. Her thin shoulders quivered under the weight of shame, and her lips moved, as if whispering a prayer he couldn't hear. "Grace, what are you doing?" His voice cracked, louder than he intended. Grace froze. The blades of grass slipped from her hand, and she turned slowly. Her dark skin glistened with sweat under the morning sun, and her eyes, deep, weary eyes that carried stories of pain and silence, looked up at him with shock and fear. I'm sorry, sir," she whispered, her voice breaking like glass. Please don't be angry." Alexander's chest tightened. Angry? He was anything but angry. Confused, horrified, shaken. Yes. But anger had no place in him now. "Grace, you're eating grass." "Why? Tell me." "Look at me." She tried to rise, but her knees wobbled, and she sank back down. Tears brimmed in her eyes, and she pressed a hand against her chest as though holding back the flood of emotions. She had hidden for too long. "I didn't want anyone to see. I thought no one would. I had no choice." Alexander stepped closer, his polished shoes crunching against the gravel path. For the first time in a long while, his wealth, his power, his empire, all of it felt meaningless. He knelt beside her, his sharp suit brushing against the earth. "You had no choice? Grace, you work in my house. There's food in the kitchen. You clean, you cook, you take care of everything. Why would you eat grass?" Grace's lips trembled. She lowered her head, her tears falling onto the soil. "My children, sir," she whispered, her words barely audible. Alexander's brows furrowed. "Children? You never mentioned children." She closed her eyes, gripping the earth with her hands as though it were the only thing grounding her. "I didn't want to trouble anyone. I didn't want pity. They're hungry. Every night, every morning. I send them everything I can. Every bit of food I can hide. Every coin I can save. And when nothing is left, I tell myself I can endure. If I chew the grass, maybe the pain in my stomach will go quiet long enough to send them a little more." Her voice cracked, raw and broken. Alexander felt a lump rise in his throat, burning, unbearable. You go hungry? In my house? While I eat at tables overflowing with food?" Grace shook her head fiercely, ashamed. "It's not your fault, sir. You've been kind. You gave me this job when no one else would. I didn't want you to know. I wanted to be strong, to do this silently. But hunger, it humbles you in ways you can't imagine. Sometimes I fear, if I collapse, my children will lose everything. And so I—" Her hands moved over the grass again, but she couldn't finish. She broke down, covering her face as sobs racked her body. For a long moment, Alexander was silent. The world around him seemed to blur, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, the scent of roses, all fading behind the storm of guilt and awakening crashing in his heart. He reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. His voice was soft, almost pleading. "Grace, why didn't you tell me? Why suffer like this? You've given me your loyalty, your strength, and I, blind in my own world, never even asked if you were okay." Grace shook her head, her tears wetting her palms. "Because, sir, people like me are not supposed to complain. We're supposed to endure. That is the life of the poor. We survive so others don't see our pain." Alexander swallowed hard. He thought of the luxury cars parked in his garage, The golden plates that decorated his dining table, the wasted food that was thrown out daily. And here she was, kneeling in the dirt, eating grass so her children could live another day. Grace. His voice cracked, his eyes stinging. Forgive me for not seeing you, for being blind to your struggle. Grace looked at him, her swollen eyes widening at the sight of the billionaire kneeling in the dirt beside her, his own tears slipping down his face. Sir, you don't need to— Yes, I do. Alexander interrupted, his voice trembling. I need to listen, I need to learn, and I need to change. No one who works under my roof should suffer like this. Not you, not anyone. Grace trembled, speechless. At that moment, silence hung in the garden. A billionaire and a maid, two worlds apart, connected by a single truth. Hunger had no boundaries, no shame, no mercy. And Alexander's heart, hardened by years of wealth and power, began to crack open in a way it never had before. The silence between them stretched on in the garden, broken only by the quiet sobs of Grace. Alexander's chest rose and fell heavily, as though he were carrying the weight of 1,000 truths he had ignored his entire life. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handkerchief, pressing it gently into her hand. She hesitated, staring at the clean white cloth, then slowly raised it to her tear-streaked face. Grace, Alexander said softly, his voice carrying a tremor he rarely allowed anyone to hear. Come with me, please. She shook her head immediately, panic flashing in her eyes. No, sir, I can't go inside like this. I'll stain your floors. Grace, he interrupted gently yet firmly. You are not dirt. You are not shame. You are a human being, and you will walk beside me. For the first time, Grace looked at him differently. Not as the distant master she worked for, but as a man who, in this moment, truly saw her. With trembling legs, she let him help her up. Inside the mansion, the vast kitchen smelled faintly of roasted bread from the morning breakfast. Plates still lined the counter, untouched croissants, fruits and pitchers of juice waiting to be cleared away. Grace's eyes darted toward them, shame and longing mingling in her gaze. She quickly lowered her head, trying not to let her hunger show. Alexander noticed. His throat tightened. Sit down. She stiffened. No, sir, That's an order, he said, though not in the cold tone of a master, but in the desperate plea of someone who needed to right a wrong. Grace sat hesitantly on the edge of the chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Alexander began to place food before her, slices of bread, fruit, cheese, and a glass of water. Her eyes widened, panic flooding her features. No, sir, I can't take this. The food is for you, your guests. I can't steal from the table. Alexander knelt in front of her again, his eyes locking with hers. Grace, this food would have been thrown away. It would have rotted in the trash while you starved. Do you understand how wrong that is? This house has been filled with abundance, and yet you, someone who serves here, has been starving. Her lips trembled. If I eat, sir, I won't be able to send enough to my children. They need it more than I do. Alexander's breath caught. How many children? Her hands shook as she answered. 3, 2 boys and a girl. The youngest is only 5. They stay with my sister in the outskirts of the city while I work here. I send her every bit of money I can. Some days, it's not enough. She tells me their stomachs hurt from crying through the night. Her voice cracked, and she covered her face again, ashamed of the truth. Alexander felt a sharp sting in his chest. He had been praised in newspapers for his philanthropy, applauded on stages for his speeches about progress and success, yet here, under his very roof, a woman had been suffering in silence, her children starving. Grace. His voice was hoarse. Eat. Just this once, don't think of the sacrifice. Think of survival. Think of your strength, please." Her eyes shimmered with tears, but slowly, hesitantly, she reached for a slice of bread. She took the smallest bite, as if afraid someone might snatch it away. The taste of real food hit her tongue, and she closed her eyes, her body trembling with both relief and grief. Alexander looked away, tears burning in his own eyes. He had never felt so powerless, so guilty. As Grace ate slowly, he pulled out his phone. For the first time, his calls were not about stock markets, business meetings, or profits. Instead, he spoke in a tone of urgency and quiet rage. "Send me the details of our employee files. Now," he ordered his assistant, "and get the car ready. We're leaving in 30 minutes. Grace froze, looking at him with wide eyes. "Sir, where are we going?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "To see your children." Her breath caught. She shook her head violently. "No, sir, please. I can't let you see them. You'll think less of me. Their clothes, their home. It's nothing compared to—" He reached across the table, taking her trembling hands in his. "Grace, do you think I care about walls, or clothes, or wealth? What I care about is the truth. And if your children are suffering, I will see it with my own eyes. No more hiding, not from me." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She wanted to argue, but the sincerity in his voice broke through the years of silence she had built around her pain. By afternoon, the black luxury car glided through the narrow, dusty streets far from the polished city. Children played barefoot by broken fences, and families sat outside small shacks of corrugated iron and wood. Grace sat in the back seat, clutching her apron tightly, her eyes darting nervously between Alexander and the world outside. The car stopped in front of a crumbling house, its roof patched with old tin, its windows covered with cloth instead of glass. Grace's hands trembled as she whispered, "This is it." Alexander's chest tightened. The contrast between his mansion and this fragile home felt like a knife to his soul. As they stepped out, 3 small faces peeked from the doorway. Thin, wide-eyed and barefoot, the children froze at the sight of the car, then broke into cries of joy. "Mommy!" they shouted, running to Grace with open arms. Grace fell to her knees, gathering them close, sobbing into their hair. "My babies! Oh, my sweet babies!" Alexander stood a few steps back, his eyes burning. The smallest girl clung to Grace's neck, whispering, "Mommy, we're hungry. Did you bring anything today?" Grace's body shook. She tried to smile, brushing the girl's cheek. "Yes, my love, I brought something." Alexander turned away, swallowing the lump in his throat. He motioned to his driver, who quickly retrieved the bags of food Alexander had ordered before leaving the mansion. Fruits, bread, rice, milk, and more, enough to fill their tiny kitchen. The children's eyes lit up as though they had just seen treasure. They rushed toward the bags, their laughter ringing in the air. Grace stared at Alexander, her mouth opening but no words coming out. She was too overwhelmed to speak. He looked at her, his voice low but firm. "No child should ever beg their mother for food, not while I have the power to change it. Grace, your days of eating grass are over. I promise you that." She pressed her hands to her mouth, sobbing uncontrollably, whispering through her tears, "God bless you, sir. You don't know what this means." But Alexander knew. For the first time, he truly knew what it meant to be human. The children's laughter filled the air, echoing in the small, crumbling house as they opened bags of food with wide-eyed wonder. For them, it was a feast unlike anything they had known in weeks. Grace sat on the floor, holding her youngest in her lap, tears streaming freely as she watched them eat. Alexander stood silently in the doorway, his tall frame almost too large for the fragile walls around him. He had walked through boardrooms filled with billionaires, through mansions gilded with marble and gold, Yet never had he felt the weight of life as he did now in this humble home. He watched the children tear into bread with tiny hands, their faces lighting up with each bite. The sound of chewing, once ordinary to him, felt like music, music of survival, of relief, of love. Grace finally rose and approached him, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Sir, you shouldn't have. You've already done more than I could ever dream." Alexander shook his head, his jaw tight. "Grace, this isn't charity. This is justice. You've given everything to others while you went without. That ends today." Her lips trembled. "But why me? Out of all the people you could help, why would a man like you care about a maid like me?" Alexander's eyes softened, and his voice dropped low, steady. "Because you are not just a maid. You are a mother, a provider, a fighter, and you remind me of something I lost a long time ago: humanity. I've been surrounded by wealth, by people who pretend to be loyal because of my money, but you, without asking, without complaining, sacrificed yourself for your children. That is strength. That is dignity. And I will never let it be trampled again." Grace broke down, covering her mouth as sobs racked her body. Alexander reached out, steadying her shoulders. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "From this day forward, you will never go hungry again. Your children will never cry themselves to sleep from hunger. I will make sure of it." Her eyes widened, filled with disbelief. "Sir, what are you saying?" Alexander glanced at the children, then back at her. "I'm saying you're family now, and family doesn't let each other starve." He pulled out his phone, making quick calls, arranging for medical checkups for the children, for proper clothing, for a monthly allowance that would be deposited directly to Grace's account. Within minutes, his world of resources had shifted from luxuries to lifelines. When he ended the call, he turned back to her. "Tomorrow, your children move into the mansion. There's more than enough room for them. They will go to school. They will eat every day. They will live, not just survive." Grace's knees buckled and she dropped to the ground. "No, sir, please, that's too much. I can't accept—" Alexander knelt with her, his voice strong but kind. "Grace, how many times did you eat grass so they could live? How many nights did you go to bed with nothing, just to send them a few coins? That was too much. What I'm offering is the least I can do." The children, noticing their mother's tears, came running, wrapping their small arms around her. "Mommy, are you okay?" Grace held them close, whispering through tears. "Yes, my babies. For the first time, I think we really are." Alexander's throat tightened. He looked away for a moment, blinking rapidly. For years, he had been praised as one of the most powerful men alive. Yet never had he felt as strong as he did in that tiny room, with 3 hungry children smiling through crumbs of bread. As the sun set behind the broken rooftops, the golden light poured into the house, painting everything in a warm glow. It was as though the world itself was blessing this new beginning. Grace stood, her children clinging to her hands, and looked at Alexander. "I don't know how to thank you. I don't have words." Alexander shook his head, his eyes moist. "Don't thank me, Grace. Just promise me something." She tilted her head, confused. "What, sir?" "Promise me you'll never hide your pain again. Promise me you'll never starve yourself in silence while pretending to be okay, because your life matters just as much as theirs. You matter, Grace, and I will remind you every day if I have to." Her lips quivered as she whispered, "I promise." For a long moment they stood there, a billionaire and his maid, no longer divided by wealth or status, but united by a bond of humanity and kindness. Alexander took a deep breath, looking at the children one last time. Then he said quietly, almost to himself, Wealth means nothing if it cannot wipe away someone's tears. True riches are found in the lives we save, not the fortunes we hoard. Days later, the mansion looked different. The halls, once quiet and cold, now echoed with the laughter of children. Grace moved with a lightness in her step, her eyes brighter than they had been in years. For the first time, Alexander felt his home was alive, and every time he sat at his dining table, he no longer saw food as decoration or excess. He saw it as life, and remembered the day he had found Grace eating grass in the garden. Sometimes the greatest act of kindness isn't found in grand gestures, but in opening our eyes to the silent suffering beside us, because the smallest act of humanity can change a life forever. Think about the person you pass by every day, the cleaner at your office, the guard at your building, the maid who sweeps your street. Maybe they smile, maybe they never complain, but behind that silence might be a hunger, a struggle you can't see. A kind word, a meal, or even noticing them as human could be the one thing that gives them strength to carry on. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Black Saga, for more powerful stories like this one. Drop a comment, like the video, and let's spread kindness together.